no voiceover.
Power isn't about what's said out loud. It's about what gets buried, what gets hidden. And right now, something that was supposed to stay buried, well, it's starting to crawl its way back to the surface.
So you've got this story right. Everyone thought it was over. Case closed. But now it's stirring. And it all comes down to two people. A prison guard, Tova Noel, and Jeffrey Epstein's accountant, a guy named Richard Kahn. What these two know, it's not just a detail. It could be the key that blows this whole thing wide open. Okay, let's just look at the timeline here because this is where it gets really unsettling. 10 days before Epstein's death, suddenly, mysterious money starts hitting guard Tova Noel's bank account. Then, flash forward, it's the morning of, just minutes before another officer, Michael Thomas, finds the body. What is Tova Noel doing? She's on a computer, searching for news about Epstein. Look, these aren't just random events. These aren't coincidences. These are signals. And you have to ask, signals of what?
Let's follow that first signal, the one coming from inside that prison cell. The official story of what went down in there, it never quite added up, did it? It always felt like something was missing. And now, these new details, we're talking about money, about blatant contradictions, they are forcing everyone to take a much, much harder look.
$5,000. That's a specific number, isn't it? That's one of the deposits. But here's the thing, it wasn't a one-off. We're talking about multiple deposits showing up in Tova Noel's account. And all of them, every single one, landed within that critical 10-day window right before Epstein was found dead. And look, this wasn't just a small blip on a screen. This was serious enough that a major bank, JP Chase, actually flagged it. They filed what's called a formal suspicious activity report. That's not something they do lightly. It's basically a giant red flare shot straight to federal authorities. So no, this isn't just a rumor or some online theory. This is a documented warning that is now sitting in the files of the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice.
Okay, and this is where the whole official narrative just completely fractures. On one side, you have the FBI. They've looked at the surveillance tapes, and their report says they see an officer who they believe is Tova Noel carrying linen towards Epstein's tier. Simple enough, right? But then you have Noel's own testimony, under oath. She says, "I never distributed linen. That was already done." Both of those things cannot possibly be true. One of them is a lie. And in an investigation of this magnitude, a direct contradiction like that, that's not just a crack in the story. That is a major pressure point.
So you have pressure building inside the prison. But that's only one thread. The other one, well, it follows the money. And at the heart of that money trail is Jeffrey Epstein's longtime accountant, Richard Kahn. And his story, it seems to change every time you look at it. It's like trying to grab a handful of smoke.
So this is the guy, Richard Kahn. As the accountant, he's the one who knows where all the bodies are buried, financially speaking. He was recently called to testify before the U.S. House Oversight Committee, and let me tell you, what he said and what he unsaid is now a huge focus of this whole thing.
I mean, just follow the gymnastics here. First, under oath, Kahn says, yes, a settlement was paid to a victim they called Jane Doe 4. Got it. But then he comes back and says, oh, wait, no, that was a mistake. And then finally, his story lands on complete uncertainty. He can't stand by either claim. Now, when a witness's testimony under oath flip-flops like that, investigators don't just think, oh, he's confused. No, they start looking for who's applying the pressure. So you have to ask yourself, why all the back and forth over this one settlement? What's so special about it? Well, the real question is, who was Jane Doe 4 accusing? Here's why it matters. The allegations weren't just pointed at Jeffrey Epstein. The official record shows that the claims made by Jane Doe 4 also involved Donald Trump. And just like that, a seemingly small detail, a shaky testimony about one financial settlement, suddenly becomes a political explosive. So now you've got these two threads, right? The prison guard's strange money and the accountant's changing story. They feel separate, but they're not. They're actually part of a much bigger, predictable pattern. It's the kind of playbook a guy like Machiavelli would have spotted from a mile away.
Machiavelli talked about something he called pressure signals. Think of them as the tiny cracks that appear when a powerful system is under strain. It's the bank report that doesn't add up. It's the testimony that suddenly changes. These aren't just mistakes. They're evidence that something is wrong. They're signs that the truth is trying to fight its way out. And right now, that pressure is being applied on purpose. You've got investigators in the U.S. House Oversight Committee, guys like Robert Garcia and Ro Khanna, who are hammering away, demanding answers about that testimony.
You've got Senator Ron Wyden leaning on banks like JP Morgan Chase for more records. They aren't waiting for the cracks to appear. They are actively looking for them. And this is where things get predictable, because whenever a powerful system gets investigated, three things always happen. First, you get exposure. New details start leaking out. Then you get containment. The powers that be try to control the story, to box it in. And finally, you get distraction. Suddenly, another big story blows up to pull everyone's attention away. We're seeing all three of these forces at play at this very moment.
So this brings us to the most critical part, because the whole game is shifting. This isn't just about what happened in the past anymore.
What you have right now are two completely competing realities fighting for control. Narrative number one says, the system worked, the investigation is over, the case is closed, move on. But narrative number two says, no way. Key details were ignored, the story was buried, and now the entire system is under a microscope. The real danger for everyone involved lies in the growing tension between those two stories.
And that is the real pivot point. See, the question is no longer what happened. That's history. The only question that matters now is what happens next. Because this investigation is live again, and all the consequences, they're still to come.
And you have to understand why this moment is so dangerous for everyone who wants this to stay buried. An accusation, that's just words. You can deny words. But a full-blown investigation, that's different. Investigations unearth evidence. We're talking bank records, sworn testimony, surveillance footage. And hard evidence? Well, evidence has the power to shatter the stories people tell themselves and tear down the realities they've built.
The pressure signals are multiplying. The cracks are getting wider. The patterns are becoming impossible to ignore. And that leaves us with one final, chilling question. As this story claws its way out of the ground, who is out there, right now, desperately trying to shovel the dirt back on top?